On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we have Mr. Brian Chee and Mr. Curtis Franklin back on the show today. Now, connected devices, especially appliances, are on the rise, but the question is, are they secure enough? Now, with hybrid work being the new norm, you need a great MDM solution for your organization. Today, we have Welden Dodd. He's SVP of Product Strategy at Kandji. We're going to talk about how you can reduce your operational overhead, especially in the world of bring your own device. You definitely shouldn't miss it. Quiet on the set.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 529, recorded February 3rd, 2023. MDM'ing Your MAC. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Miro. Miro is your team's visual platform to connect, collaborate, and create together. Tap into a way to map processes, systems, and plans with the whole team. Get your first 3 boards for free to start creating your best work yet at Miro.com/podcast. And by Decisions. Don't let complexity block your company's growth. Decisions no-code, rules-driven process automation software provides every tool needed to build custom workflows, empowering you to modernize legacy systems, ensure regulatory compliance, and renew the customer experience. Visit decisions.com/twit to learn how automating anything can change everything. And by Bitwarden. Get the password manager that offers a robust and cost-effective solution that can drastically increase your chances of staying safe online. Get started with a free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. Welcome to TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how those worlds connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide to the big world of the enterprise. And what a big world it is. And I can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals and the experts, starting with our very own senior analyst at IMDA. He's also the man that's been around the block and back with the enterprise and enterprise security. He is Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, it's always great to see you, my friend. How are you doing?
Doing reasonably well, Lou, and happy not to be in the Northeast, where I understand you have glaciers and polar bears coming through. Let's see. Oh, well, it's a cool day here in Florida, 61 degrees. So that explains the long sleeves and everything. But it's a good day to be inside and doing analysis work. Got a lot going on. Especially, it's hard to believe, but we're beginning to get ready for RSA. The RSA conference is coming up in April, so I'm already starting to get queries from companies about wanting to see me out there, starting to put together my dance card, and looking forward to be out and amongst the industry once again.
Indeed. I'm looking forward to that coverage. It definitely is a little bit nippy outside today, so hopefully it'll keep me on my game here. We'll have to see. It's great to see you, Curtis. Well, we also have to welcome back our net architect of Sky Fabric and my favorite network guy. He is our very own Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert. I hear through the grapevine you're trying to rewire the Orlando Fairgrounds. How's that coming?
It is moving along. We tried the Mocha modems, and sadly, there seem to be some filters installed, and we haven't been able to find them. So we're going to plan B. We found out that the single strand fiber that people like AT&T and so forth have been using to put fiber to the home, because they're putting so much fiber in, the cost for a 1,000-foot spool of fiber is actually dropping down to about $70. That's $70 for 1,000 feet. So that actually puts it almost in the same kind of price category as high quality Cat 6 cable, which is kind of cool. So we may end up going and hanging that around in different places. I'm also tinkering with this. This is a $7 camera, and it's the ESP32-cam, and $7 on actually on Amazon, just almost $8. But I'm waiting for the programmer so that I can go and load different firmware on it. Because right now it's just a straight HTML camera and it can take snapshots and so forth. But what I really want is something that can stream and then also be able to do time lapse. And then the plan is I'm going to use the Blue Iris software to start doing that. I'm going to actually stick it in a little acrylic tube with rubber stoppers on the end so that I can also put a battery pack in it and be able to hang them from trees or what have you, so I can, add really inexpensive surveillance for some of my senior neighbors. Ought to be fun.
Very cool. You got all the toys. Very cool. Thank you, Chee. Well, it's great having you here. Well, I say it's quite busy in the enterprise this week, and I think should definitely get started. Connected devices, especially appliances, are on the rise. In fact, Gartner is actually showing that the market will grow to $96 billion by 2030. The question is, are we on a good path? Are we on a good trend here, especially around securing devices? We'll definitely talk about it. Now, with hybrid work, with the new norm, it's more important than ever you have a great MDM solution implemented for your organization. Today, we have Welden Dodd. He's SVP of Product Strategy at Kandji. And we're going to talk about how you can reduce your operational overhead, especially in the world of bringing your own devices. So definitely stick around. We have lots to talk about here. But before we do have to go and jump into this week's news blips. We've talked a lot about how AI will be impacting the enterprise in the near future. Now, with the latest news from OpenAI, the advancements they are targeting over the next several years has some other big tech companies a bit nervous. In fact, it has been said that this has kickstarted an AI arms race this year. Google is no exception to this rule. They are more and more becoming less relevant, especially since it's becoming harder and harder to produce useful search results without being bombarded with advertisements. Now, Google sees the writing on the wall here. According to the Verge article here, they are gearing up to compete with OpenAI's ChatGPT by letting people actually interact directly in its newest, most powerful language models as a companion to search. Sound familiar? Well, with the news of the potential Bing augmenting their search with OpenAI's superpowers of GPT and other generative technologies, Google needs something to curb that storm, and they think that this will be it. Now, Google has yet to really have a public answer to this new wave of technology and popularity, but we'll see what happens soon. Now, internally, Google reportedly has employees testing its own API or an AI-powered chatbot rival to ChatGPT as well. Now, although Google says they are taking this slow so they can be responsible with AI, they need to add some momentum, especially to get some latest trends out there, because if they don't move ahead soon, they'll catch behind. Now, I don't know about you, but Google should be shaking their boots by now.
Well, it may not be time to talk of cabbages and kings, but it is time to talk about email and flightless birds. And let me tell you, the connection isn't particularly pretty. Business email compromise, or BEC, has become one of the most popular methods of financially motivated hacking. And over the past year, one particular group has been busy showing the world just how quick, easy, and lucrative it can be. In an article at Dark Reading, we see research on Firebrick Ostrich, a threat actor that's been performing BEC on a massive scale. According to Crane Hasselt, Director of Threat Intelligence at Abnormal Security, in the last 2 years, Firebrick Ostrich has carried out more than 350 BEC campaigns, impersonating 151 organizations and utilizing 212 malicious domains in the process. Now, this group is unusual in that it doesn't carry out the carefully crafted spear phishing campaigns usually required to get the information necessary to take over an email account. Instead, it just sprays phishing email around the landscape in the hopes that someone somewhere will bite. And as it turns out, that approach has been successful enough to generate huge profits for Firebrick Ostrich. In addition, rather than impersonating an executive at the victim's company, which is the normal pattern, Firebrick Ostrich tends to impersonate someone in the company's supply chain, making their BECs an extension of the supply chain vulnerability attacks that have become so popular among the criminal class. Now, all that's needed is an understanding that two organizations connect to one another somehow, most often that one provides a product or service to the other, and this is the sort of information that is generally quite publicly available. Once they've found their targets, Firebrick Ostrich doesn't seek out bank information from its victims. Rather, its operatives request to update their own or the vendor's bank details for future payments. And the attack pattern is incredibly fast and efficient. Abnormal Security found that in 75% of the cases, it found Firebrick Ostrich registered a malicious vendor domain within just 2 days of sending an opening phishing email, and 60% of the time, that domain was registered within 24 hours. In 2022, an FBI PSA appeared declaring BEC a $43 billion a year scam. It's tough to defend against BEC with technology because it is essentially an attack on human weaknesses. Best defense is an educated workforce that is empowered to question any and all requests for financial information and payment action.
This article from Ars Technica is actually something I've been waiting for quite a while. The headline reads, iOS 16.3 and macOS Ventura 13.2 is adding hardware security key support. Well, this one is something that has needed to happen. People hate passwords. So in the article, they're saying once they've updated the new software, a user can opt to make a device like a YubiKey a required part of two-factor authentication process for their account. It's unlikely most users will take advantage of this, of course, but for a select few, the extra security is welcome. Other additions in iOS 16.3, including support for the upcoming HomePod model, a tweak to how emergency SOS calls are made, and a new Black History Month wallpaper. On the Mac side, hardware security key support is joined by the rollout of Rapid Security Response, a means for urgent security updates to be delivered to Macs without issuing a major software update. The watchOS update is oriented around bug fixes. Well, my opinion is kind of still up in the air. I've just finally upgraded to a level on both my Mac and my phone to a level that would support the YubiKey. So in an ideal world, I would love to have a dongle that is both USB and Bluetooth so that I can use a single device for both my mobiles and my desktop. I've known for years that I hate passwords, but live in dread of losing a dongle or finding it crushed in my pocket by my keys. Sadly, all the dongles I've used so far seem to assume I'm carrying a purse and not sticking a wad of keys in my pocket.
The more and more I get back in embedded device development, I can definitely understand the need for power efficiency and component density. I just had to talk about the latest MIT news here that's been posted. Now, screens today come in all shapes and sizes and resolutions, but they have one important thing in common. The red, blue, and green subpixels are arranged side by side. Now, even the smaller pixels packed as tightly as possible, this flat arrangement is reaching its theoretical density limit. That means you need a new way to arrange them and make them smaller or in order to actually create a greater density. Now, that's where MIT's engineers have stepped up to help. They have developed a new stackable LED technology. Using a novel ultra-thin membrane fabrication process, the researchers have created a display with red, blue, and green pixels in a vertical stack. Now, this could push pixel density an order of magnitude higher, making virtual reality visually indistinguishable from the real world. Now, this might have Samsung and LG out there drilling of who's going to jump on the tech first. They might actually have to call it quantum stacked technology or something similar. I coined it here for folks, so definitely come to me if you want to give me some dime for that. Now, today's highest quality displays use organic light emitting diodes, those OLEDs out there, which produce light with fed and electric current. Now, even with the clever subpixel arrangement they have, the density can't go much higher than it already has. And as the pixels actually get smaller, so does the amount of light they can emit. So the next step is to go to the micro LED. Now, these are diodes that are 100 times smaller and composed of inorganic materials. And this problem is that the micro LEDs are fabricated separately as red, green, and blue matrices, which then are actually overlaid with extreme accuracy, which causes a little bit of higher cost and more waste, even if one pixel is misaligned. Now, the technology developed by MIT is essentially better, and it's less wasteful than those micro LEDs that are out there. The team used past work on the 2D membrane materials to manufacture membranes of red, green, and blue subpixels. They peeled the membranes away from that rigid base layer they have there, and they stacked them up on top of each other, creating a vertical full color pixel just 4 micrometers wide. Now, the actual effective pixel density of the team's micro-LED matrix is 5,000 pixels per inch. That's the highest ever reported in any literature out there. Now, if commercialized, vertical pixels would represent a huge increase in clarity, particularly for VR and AR applications. Imagine just how good your Beat Saber will look then. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, the bites. But before we get to the bites, we do have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Miro. Quick question. Are you and your team still going from tab to tab, tool to tool, losing brilliant ideas and important information along the way? Well, with Miro, that doesn't need to happen. Miro is the collaborative visual whiteboard that brings all of your great work together, no matter where you are. Whether you're working from home or in a hybrid workplace, everything comes together in one place online. At first glance, it might seem like just a simple digital whiteboard, but Miro's capabilities run far beyond that. In fact, it's a visual collaboration tool packed with features for the whole team to build on each other's ideas and create something innovative from anywhere. Now, shorten the time to launch so your customers get what they need faster. In fact, with Miro, you need only one tool to see your vision come to life. Planning, researching, brainstorming, designing, and feedback cycles, it can all live on a Miro board across teams. And faster input means faster outcomes. In fact, Miro users report that the tool increased project delivery speeds by 29%. View and share the big picture overview in a cinch. When everyone has a voice and everyone can tap into a single source of truth, your teams remain engaged, invested, and more importantly, they're happy. Cut out any confusion on who needs to do what by mapping out processes, roles, and timelines. You can do that with several templates, including Miro's swim lane diagram. Strategic planning becomes easier when it's visual and accessible. Tap into a way to map processes, systems, and plans with the whole team so they not only view it, but have a chance to give feedback as well. Now, if you're feeling meaning fatigue, I know I am, Miro users report saving up to 80 hours. It's a lot of time per user per year just for streamlining conversations. Ready to be part of the more than 1 million users who join Miro every month? Get your first 3 boards for free. Start working better together at Miro.com/podcast. That's MIRO.com/podcast. And we thank Miro for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's time for the bites. Now, have we and the media done a really good job, or maybe even a bad job, at convincing that smart appliances might be more convenient, but actually maybe more dangerous? Well, according to this Ars Technica article, appliance makers like Whirlpool and LG out there can't understand why 50% of their customers connect their devices. That means 50% of the other customers don't connect their devices. Now, this article calls out a Wall Street Journal report, which states that customers don't actually know all the things that a manufacturer can actually do if the users or if they themselves connect the device that spins their clothes or keeps their food cold. Now, that's the like providing manufacturers with data insights about how customers are using their products, or other things like allowing customers to send over the air updates like firmware updates, or in fact maybe even advertising for relevant parts, replacement parts, or even subscription services. Now, the new revenue model of 2023 and beyond is services. You and I both know that. Now, this means that companies like Whirlpool are actually missing out on services revenue, which is an increasingly crucial to manufacturers who are actually facing rising costs and declining replacement purchases, and in fact, hungry shareholders that are out there. As an example, why they need these service connections, LG saw an actually increase in water filter sales when it tracked water volumes on connected fridges versus non-connected fridges. Now, to me, manufacturers are in a bit of denial here. Is it really because customers are unsure about the intentions of the connected devices, or is it something else? Because, these devices are somewhat unsafe. They don't have good security measures by opening up a number of them to the internet. They include potentially being taken over to become part of a botnet. They have short supply shelf and as well as short shelf life for their firmwares and their software updates, meaning a washer and dryer might last 10 years and it's open to attacks for more than half of that. Now, there's a lot of questions here. I want to bring my co-host back in because I feel like this article points out the point of view from the manufacturer side. They're saying, hey, like customers are just really unsure of what we're going to do with the data. Maybe we just need to do a better job of advertising. I have a different point of view. My point of view here is I think customers are a little bit enlightened here, and they understand that there's some risk when you actually put these things on there, especially seeing that, devices that I have here, refrigerators, washers and dryers that are connected, they don't get updates anymore. So the question to you guys is, do you think that they maybe need to start forcing manufacturers like LG and Whirlpool to start following some set of standards, especially around security and as well as what they do with your data? What do you guys think?
Well, I'm going to go with a thing of, I'm not sure that regulation is required, but certainly reining in some lazy programmers. For example, there's a story over on the Register that talks about some smart appliances that were doing some very dumb things. In this case, a researcher who is also, as it turns out, Lou, a Microsoft MVP in security, saw some strange traffic coming out of his home network. It turns out that a couple of his appliances, smart appliances built by a company called AEG, are Wi-Fi connected. And like a lot of Wi-Fi connected devices, they do regular checks to see if there's an internet connection. The frequent way of doing this is pinging a public website. I know when I set up a network somewhere, one of the first things I do is go out and ping CNN or someplace like that just to see if I've got a connection. Well, they go out and they ping google.com. So far, so good. But they also ping a couple of other sites like Baidu.cn, which is popular in China, and Yandex.ru, which is a Russian search engine. Now, just imagine, if you will, that you are a company that does government contracting and you put one of these toasters in your break room and suddenly you see traffic going to Russia and China. Someone's going to have questions. The same can be true of lots of individuals. Why on earth would you have traffic going to these places? The answer, of course, is that just like Google, they tend to be up. But the strange thing is that the company that made the ovens and the toasters has their own web service. They have their own cloud. Why not ping yourself? The article points out, and it's quite true, a number of large companies, including Apple, including Microsoft, including Facebook and Amazon, all have devices that regularly ping the internet to see if there's an internet connection, but they also have their own dedicated sites that are used for those pings, so it doesn't generate spurious traffic. So I think that, we won't even call it high security programming. We're going to call it a modest amount of common sense would go a long way, as would some of the same services that we are used to getting from commercial products that are connected. Lou, you mentioned the idea of appliances and other devices letting you know when consumables are nearing the end of their life. I know when I had an EMC squared storage device at a lab that I ran, it was not at all uncommon for me to get a phone call from EMC service saying, hey, we noticed that one of the drives in that cabinet is starting to go slightly out of balance. We'll have somebody there in an hour to replace that drive, before it failed. And that's the kind of real service that I think could drive people to want to have this connectivity. I don't need my refrigerator to help me make my shopping list. I would like it to let me know if something is beginning to go wrong with the compressor so I can get it taken care of before my food spoils.
Hey, Cheebert, regulation, no regulation, useful, not useful?
Regulation, big no. I'm more of hands off, please. Now, as far as should they do a better job? Yeah. Just like Kurt, I was actually a NetApp customer, and it was really, really awesome to have them schedule. I'd actually have parts arrive even before I knew I had a problem. That was amazing. And as a result, we actually held on to our NetApp appliance a lot longer than we had actually thought we were going to. And I would love the same thing in my appliances, but all the smart appliances I've been working, I've got a couple of LGs and I've got some Samsungs, and truth be told, I'm not impressed. They're trying to get some, they're basically trying to tell me different things like, is my oven hot? I don't care. I want to know if something's going wrong. I want to know if, my oven is smoking or something like that. It would be great if the washer and dryers did something other than just go beep. I know Curtis put a webcam on his washer dryer just so that they can find out when things are done. And I keep thinking, gee, wouldn't it be nice if that was, say, a LoRa enabled device or a Bluetooth enabled, something, so that I can have an app that actually tells me something that I need, how many minutes are left in a spin cycle or what have you. Now, so here's one of the things that I really would like our friends to start thinking about. Wi-Fi is great. But how many of you have your washer and dryer in the garage? And how many people actually have a strong Wi-Fi signal in their garage or in a separate laundry or something? So many vendors are going crazy and saying, oh, we're just going to put Wi-Fi in it mostly because the Wi-Fi chip and so forth is really cheap. And sadly, a lot of these appliance manufacturers aren't integrating it in. It's a slap-on. It might be something as simple as maybe an ESP32 microprocessor that's just monitoring what normally would be a buzzer line or a door alarm or something like that. Very simple stuff. It's just standard IO. And they're using that to go to apps. And they're not doing a very good job of writing apps. Most of the apps that I've seen from appliance manufacturers are buggy. And if you try to do some pen testing on them, you find out they're leaking all kinds of data and their security is almost useless. I'm kind of wondering about that. And not only that, I've actually made complaints to several manufacturers saying, hey, could you guys please close up this security hole in this app? I get crickets, nothing. So realistically, appliances are still really primitive. And please hire some real programmers. I don't know who your programmers are. I don't know who you're outsourcing it to, but think hard. Your designs stink.
Interesting that you said that. I think I was reading an article or research paper recently around the fact that obviously there's going to be a lot more IoT devices out there. Obviously we're seeing it right now with smart fridges and so on. And the fact that there needs to be somewhat of a level of a framework for organizations to follow, maybe not a set of standards, but at least a framework for them to follow. And I think they've called out several areas that they would like organizations, manufacturers to follow and actually have some level of security and reliability into them. Different categories they were able to kind of call out here is obviously integrity, making sure that, in the case of if you're going to connect something to Wi-Fi, make sure it's done securely, make sure that, there's a way for you to isolate the type of data that goes over the network, make sure that there's not a way to execute or invoke operations on the device that could cause harm to the actual device itself. that kind of thing. And that goes to same thing with availability. That's the next category, is making sure that if the device is always on or available, it could mean that it is also a security risk and a safety risk, because that means it could be accessed at any point in time. And that means that somebody externally could maybe fake traffic from, these websites that are out there that maybe their Whirlpool service or whatnot, and make the device do something that they didn't necessarily want it to do. And that could cause a safety risk. So that's another problem, is making sure that you follow up and ensure that there's a good set of availability. Authentication is the next one, is just making sure that you secure the device. You make sure that you're securing the firmware. You find ways to secure, especially during updates, that verify its integrity before you update the device. So I think essentially a framework, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on at least having a framework. But the other thing I want to throw out there is I'm seeing short-lived support from companies, and they can choose whatever they want. I mean, I just recently got emails from Amazon around my Eero devices. Just even after 4 years, they've decided to no longer put updates on. This is the Eero Pros, put updates on the devices. So now they're basically just, bricks on my desk over here. So the question to you guys is, should we start forcing corporations, if they're going to put something in the wild that can be connected to the internet, should we force them to provide some level of security support for over a period of time? Companies like Microsoft, they do it for 10 plus years. Should this be required for IoT devices as well? What do you guys think?
Well, let me start with, you mentioned a framework. Funny you should, because there is such a thing. The National Institute of Safety and Technology, or Science and Technology, NIST, has a cybersecurity for IoT program. Obviously, they have lots of stuff for federal agencies, but they do have consumer IoT products, manufacturers. So, it's not as though no one has ever thought of this. People have thought of it. It's just getting the manufacturers to adopt it that's the hard part. Now, as for forcing manufacturers, we've got some of that on a state level. If you'll recall, California has implemented some IoT cybersecurity regulations for things that are being sold in the future. They tend to regard things like the ability to be updated and the ability to, say, change your password, administrative password, and all that, not the requirement that they be updated. It's a good question, and I'm sure that if pressed, the good folks who sell Eero would say that, well, they're not bricks, they still work, they're just now massive security holes. Yeah, there's a huge difference there. And so what we get to decide as consumers is how important these things are to us. If, as consumers, we vote with our pocketbooks and buy the devices, buy the systems that have better security, have more mature programming, then the competition will see that and adapt. If we continue to buy the cheapest thing, regardless of whether or not it invites, programmers from around the world into our living room, then that's exactly what we're going to get.
I agree as well. And they'll be in their living room for 10 plus years. So we'll see how that goes. Well, thanks, Curtis. I appreciate it. I think we're ready to move on, because we want to get to our guests. We want to have them drop some knowledge on the TWiT. But before we do want to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Decisions. Now, there's always that goal of empowering anyone in your organization to help you automate things without being a coding expert. Well, looks like Decisions might be that close to perfect platform for you. I was able to actually create workflows plus convert custom code into logic into the enterprise rule system within Decisions. Really easy, really impressive tools, super easy to use. The Decisions gives IT and business experts the tools to automate anything in your company, all within one no-code platform. Decisions is proven to fix any business process and prepare you to withstand economic uncertainty. Now, recession resilience requires a deliberate management of resources and the flexibility to adapt it at a moment's notice, right? The Decisions No code environment makes it easy for your team to collaborate, to build and adjust workflows, dynamic forms, and decision processes that fit your unique and ever-changing business needs. Now, this is especially important with today's IT talent shortage. Now, Decisions process automation software is a complete toolkit that allows developers and business users alike to build applications and automation with no code required. Now, the no-code platform is powerful. It includes robust rules and workflow engines and a host of pre-built integrations that connect to any legacy system via an API, all within a simple drag and drop visual interface design. And it can be deployed on-prem or in the cloud as well. Now, companies were caught flat-footed at the onset of the pandemic, but Decisions customers were fully equipped to respond. In fact, one of the country's largest private banks built an entire PPP loan application process for small businesses affected by COVID-19 in just 2 days. 2 days. They were the first to market, issuing $1 billion in loans before their competitors even get a chance to get started. Now, Decisions lets you customize workflows to automate the small decisions, producing faster results with greater accuracy, and allowing your team to focus on the more important decisions. Now, scale your business to better serve your customers while reducing those operational costs and saving your team valuable time. Now, here's one great example of how Decisions automation can help. Otis Elevators, you know them, implemented Decisions to run daily pulse checks across their 2 million units operating globally. By finding potential problems before they occur, they avoid downtime, manage their service technicians efficiently. And if you happen to be riding on the Otis elevator, you can be assured you'll arrive safely to your destination. Now, as a recession approaches, the durability of a business foundation will directly impact its performance and ability to survive. Now, how strong is your foundation? Definitely a good question to ask yourself. The Decisions automation platform provides the solution to any business challenge, automating anything and changing everything to improve your company's speed to market, financial growth, and operational success. They help industry leaders alleviate bottlenecks and automate pain points in their business so you can do what you do best and change the world. To learn more about Decisions no-code automation platform and scope your free proof of concept, visit decisions.com/twit. That's decisions.com/twit. And we thank Decisions for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on the TWiT riot. Today we have Welden Dodd. He's SVP of Product Strategy at Kandji. Welcome to the show, Welden.
Thanks, Lewis. Great to be here. Excited to talk to you and Brian and Kurt today.
Appreciate it. Now, our audience loves to hear people's origin stories and people's journey through tech. Can you maybe take us through a short journey through tech and what brought you to Kandji?
Yeah, sure, you bet. As I look back, I was thinking about the ad read you just did for Decisions. I look back over my career. It looks a little bit more like a roller coaster ride than an elevator going straight up. But it started with Apple. When I was at university, I was at UCSB. I ran the Mac lab and the Next lab there. And UCSB was one of the original nodes on the ARPANET. And so I got introduced to TCP/IP. And my career went in computer consulting and IT work. And I joined a large multinational consulting firm that was doing wireless telecom, just at a time when that industry was transitioning from analog networks to digital and from circuit switch networks to packet switch networks. And that TCP/IP knowledge came in handy. Did that for a long time, almost a decade. And the last 15 years or so, I've been focused on Apple and the enterprise. So I had a chance to get into training and teach other admins how to manage Apple at the enterprise. Did professional services work for Apple, where I worked with really large customers that were deploying technologies that would help them. And that happened to be right at the time when MDM was introduced back in 2010. So the last 10, 13 years has been kind of another period of change in that direction. And that's what brought me to Kandji. So Kandji is a company that's focused on delivering device management tools and security tools for companies that want to deploy Apple devices.
So that brings me to my next question. We hear a lot of times, obviously organizations, they want to implement MDM, but they find it somewhat complicated because they have a set of users that want to bring their own devices. They have a set of users that maybe have corporate devices themselves, and they want to be able to provide a solution that can handle both of them, both whether they are iOS devices, Apple devices, or Android devices, or whatnot. What do you suggest to corporations when they begin to look for a solution like MDM? What should they be looking for? What should they be focusing on?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a few things that are really important. One is, like, to successfully deploy Apple technologies for a business, you have to utilize the MDM protocols that Apple provides. It is necessary to enable security tooling if you want to deploy any kind of endpoint protection. The entitlement to inspect what's going on the device comes through MDM. So it prevents and protects users from, downloading malicious software that would have access to the same entitlements. So having a corporate-owned device, the company can enable that entitlement through MDM so that it's the right actors that have access to that information. So it really is necessary. Now, what are you looking for? Which one should you choose? There's, I'll try to hesitate from going into an ad for Kandji about why they should choose us, right? But there's a progression here in the industry around tools that were built, 10, 20 years ago that had a different view of how to protect the enterprise. There was a perimeter-based approach. There was the concept that computing devices, the endpoints themselves, would be inside of that perimeter. But over the last decade, we've seen the shift of core IT services out to the cloud and outside of the perimeter. And with remote work and hybrid work, we've seen that same shift where the endpoints have moved outside of the perimeter and they're at people's homes, that are in hotels, coffee shops, airport lounges, etc. And so having tools that help you to manage your devices wherever they are and that understand the world we live in, about connected technology, and also help with solving problems as quickly as possible, like getting to the end result that you want, while also providing a really nice experience for the end user. Those are the things that I think most companies want to balance, right? It's necessary to protect and enable the endpoint to ensure that the user is productive with the apps and tools and things they need, but it also needs to be secure so they can work from wherever they have to be.
So you said a couple of things that I can relate to. I definitely think the usability of an MDM solution is really important, because I know I've used several. I brought mine devices. I've used corporate devices before, and I can say that having used third-party MDM solutions, some of them are just really challenging to figure out how to make your device compliant. Because if you have an old, like, let's say, Android device or whatnot, that might not be up to par on the firmware version or whatnot. It's not necessarily clear, what version do I need to be on? How do I do that? Do I have to have other applications? Do I have to have a secure VPN installed on my device? That kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily make it very clear and very useful for me to go and do that. So I have a challenge of like figuring out what needs to happen next. So I think usability is definitely a super important thing. But I think one of the other things is the fact that, making sure devices are compliant. Do you see this a lot where organizations allow for people bringing their own devices? It helps kind of reduce the costs of their operational costs because of the fact that people are okay with bringing their own devices. Do you feel like the making sure devices are compliant, that's a very challenging thing that, even in the Apple ecosystem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Compliance and helping companies achieve compliance on their endpoints was really the original idea behind Kandji. So we saw the difficulty there that companies were having with tools that were available, and we saw an opportunity. We thought there was a better way. It's really important for companies to know that devices are encrypted, that they have a passcode enabled, that these kind of basics are taken care of. But we can go beyond that to make sure that the applications are up to date. If there's known vulnerabilities on a particular application, that's patched in a timely way. Is taken care of quickly. If there's an active threat on a device, that we can isolate it or quarantine that threat so that we know it's not going to infect the rest of the corporate network. Compliance is a huge need today. We've only seen an increase in the use of SOC 2 in the US. All companies, tend to need to certify to their partners that they're SOC 2 compliant. And those compliance policies are showing up around the rest of the world. CMMC, there's lots of cybersecurity essentials in the UK and beyond. So it's going to continue to be a really important part of managing endpoints.
So another thing I wanted to ask around, obviously a little adjusted from a compliance thing, is I noticed, even from a personal aspect, I've talked to a lot of people who, work for Google or one of these big corporations that require, if you bring your own device, that you have MDM installed on it. The one concern is the fact that the corporation might be watching things a little bit more closely than they like. Is this the case for most MDM solutions, or is it just based on policy or how far the organization wants to go?
Apple has tried to really, strike the right balance between allowing for corporate control and end user privacy. And so that's something that we really feel strongly about as well, that we want to try to find that right balance. Ultimately, if the device belongs to the company, it's their device. They should be able to do what they want for it. But there is an obligation, I think, to protect the privacy of the end user. So one example of that, we implemented lost mode in Kandji, so that if a device is reported as missing, that there's a way to use Apple's MDM protocol to put it into what's called lost mode. At that point, that's when we start collecting the location data, or we request it from the device if it's online, and we track it from that standpoint. The device is locked and it's protected until the company either retrieves it or if it's found, right? They can make a decision. If the device is recovered and everything's good and we can end that lost mode, then the location data is ephemeral. We erase it. We let go of it because we don't want to provide the perception or create the perception that these tools like Kandji are tracking the user all the time. That's not the purpose. That's not how they're meant to be used. That's not what Apple wants us to do with it. It's not what the end user wants. There's a lot of metadata that can be inferred if you track someone's location all the time. We don't want to do that. So our implementation of lost mode, I think, is a good example of trying to strike that balance between providing the company with the tools that they need. If a device is lost, can they lock it down and know it's protected, maybe recover it, but also reassure the end user that, hey, look, we're not going to follow you to your doctor's appointment after work, or where you pick up your kid from daycare, or where you go back home, right?
Makes sense. Well, I do want to bring my co-host back in, but before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Bitwarden. Now, you may have been following all that's going on in the world of passwords and security lately. I've switched to Bitwarden personally. It's a really amazing platform. In fact, it was super easy to get all my passwords imported on there. I was able to set up biometrics and get it on all of my devices. Plus, all of my family members found it really super easy and satisfying to use. So make it your New Year's resolution for better security. Just use Bitwarden. It's the only open source cross-platform password manager that can be used at home, at work, or on the go, and it's trusted by millions. Even our very own Steve Gibson has switched over. We know how important he finds security. With Bitwarden, you can securely store credentials across personal and business worlds. All of your data in your Bitwarden vault is end-to-end encrypted, not just your passwords. That includes URLs for all your websites and your accounts. Now, for Bitwarden, they don't track your data in the mobile apps, only crash reporting. Even that is reported for in the F-Droid installation. Now, Bitwarden is open source, and it invites anyone to review their library implementations and at any time on GitHub, and also to review the Bitwarden privacy policies at bitwarden.com/privacy. Now, protect your personal data and privacy with Bitwarden by adding security to your passwords with strong, randomly generated passwords for each of your accounts. Go a step further with the username generator and create unique usernames for each account as well, or even use any of the 5 integrated email alias services. Now, Bitwarden offers email alias generation with simple logon, a non-ADDI, Firefox Relay Fastmail, and now DuckDuckGo. Now, these services will allow you to create a masked email address, one that you could use for only one website, for example, and you can actually forward any of the emails to your primary email account from there. Now, this keeps your main email address out of the databases of the services and sites you sign up for. I like that a lot. The Bitwarden is a must-need for your business as well. It's fully customizable and it adapts to your business needs. Now, their Teams organization option is a $3 a month per user, and the enterprise organization plan is a $5 a month per user. Great cost there. Now, share private data securely with your coworkers across departments or even your entire company with these plans. Now, individuals can use their basic free account forever for an unlimited number of passwords, or they can upgrade anytime to their premium account for less than $1 a month. Now, the family organization option, which I use, gives up to 6 users premium features for only $3.33 a month. The Bitwarden supports importing and migrating from many other programs too, which I use. Very easy to use. Gets in there in a couple minutes. At TWiT, we are fans of password managers. Bitwarden is the only open source cross-platform password manager that can be used at home, on the go, or at work, and is trusted by millions of individuals, teams, and organizations worldwide. Get started with a free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. That's bitwarden.com/twit. And we thank Bitwarden for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we've been talking with Welden Dodd, SVP of Product Strategy at Kandji, about MDM and the enterprise market. But I do want to bring my co-host back in. I'm going to start with Brian. Any questions?
I've got a question. I did a news story just a few minutes ago about how Apple is pushing for us to start using things like YubiKeys, so passwordless. Obviously, that's going to change the world of MDM. Has Apple started working with you folks already on this type of thing? And are you guys ready for the flood of support calls that's going to be dongles? You know, one dongle to rule them all, but getting there sounds hard.
Yeah. The place we've started there is working with Apple to connect the endpoints with IDP providers like companies like Okta, so that you can log into your computer with the same password that you would use for all your other corporate applications, the exact same password that you use with Okta. That also enables us to push tools like Okta Verify onto the device, so that that sort of passwordless experience can be enabled through whatever IDP the customer is using. So that's a great starting point. You know, the end user gets to use the same password, they get authenticated in, they now are connected with their IDP and any other SaaS applications that might tie into that ecosystem of identity. Layering on hardware keys on top of that to provide an additional layer of security through identification, frankly, would be amazing. I think it's something that all of our customers are super interested in, and particularly for really sensitive resources where that extra security, that extra confidence that the device is trusted and ready to access sensitive information is great. We're looking forward to it.
Well, hey, speaking of sensitive information, SSO is one of those double-edged swords. Mm-hmm. And every single MDM that I've played with so far considers SSO just to be yet another resource. There's no extra something. Have your customers in industry started calling for treating SSO differently?
One of the things that we worked on, we created a tool called Passport that creates this connection with the IDP, and it uses OIDC with the OpenID Connect with the resource owner password grant flow. And that provides like a really nice experience for the end user, where when they enter the password, that we can update the password on the local device or at the IDP side, depending on what's needed, without us having any access to the password, right? Without us sitting as a man in the middle. So I do think there's ways to take SSO, take single sign-on, and implement it in products in a nice way. And then, you know, there's ways to do it that are less nice. And part of our goal is to try to create that really nice experience for the end user, so it feels seamless. It feels like it's working well.
Curtis?
I appreciate it. And my questions are maybe a little bit larger in scope and not quite as detailed. One of them is this. You know, we've long heard that the Apple ecosystem was great for creatives, but for the real work, you really need to go with a PC. Do you think that the development and the maturity of MDM is enabling more parts of companies and more companies to consider Apple products for someone who doesn't have an art degree?
Yeah. I think another factor here is, people like the experience of using Apple products. That's, I think a lot of creatives have appreciated the attention to detail and sort of the thoughtful design in the products. But I think that appeal of Apple products is extending beyond that original base. In the 90s, there was a lot of adoption of Apple because the underlying technologies, the Unix underpinnings of Apple matched the development platform that a lot of people were using to build web applications and internet-based applications. And that got Apple pretty deeply entrenched in some engineering disciplines as well. A lot of software engineers appreciate Apple. I worked with Cisco for a while when I was in telecom, and I saw the shift where when I showed up at the beginning of the 90s, everyone was using Windows. And then by the end, today, a lot of Cisco engineers use Apple products. The things that people appreciate about them, their ease of use, the accessibility, their cleanness, the design aesthetic, all those things, as well as the performance that we see now with Apple Silicon, have really prompted end users to appreciate and enjoy using Apple products. I think admins, our customers who use these tools to manage them, appreciate them because there's a clean way to manage them, and they're perceived as being more secure right out of the box. And so those things help admins consider adding them as an option. So obviously still lots of people use Windows and Linux and other technologies for endpoints. And when we get into mobile devices, there's Chrome OS and Android as well as iOS. But Apple has its place and it continues to grow. Some of the surveys that we've seen, even one that we commissioned ourselves, show that most companies have seen an increase in the use of Apple devices at their company.
Well, you talked about Apple being perceived as being more secure. And certainly Apple's ecosystem tends to be a more homogeneous ecosystem. You tend to have the vast majority of people using roughly the same version of an given operating system. Mm-hmm. Is that why when you talk to companies about MDM, and when you talk to end-using companies about mobile devices, you hear much more about Apple than you do about, say, Android, where there are, at last count, about 4,000 different versions of the Android operating system?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the shift to Apple Silicon is only going to increase that trend, right? The hardware platform is pretty set. It's highly performant. People see the price performance ratio, the improved battery life with Apple Silicon. So there's really a nice incentive to get everyone onto modern hardware. And then that leads to, like you said, a bit more homogeneous layout in terms of what versions of the operating system are active. That's one of the things that we try to focus on automating for our customers, was helping them get to the most recent version of the operating system as quickly as possible, both by providing clear tools for the admin to set deadlines and set the enforcement of those OS updates, but also creating a really nice experience for the end user so that they know it's coming, they can adjust to it, plan for when their computer is going to reboot, and get to that latest consistent version of the OS just as soon as possible.
Well, I appreciate that. That is dynamite. And I want to ask a follow-on question to this. This is a great topic for us because we've had a number of listener requests for this as a topic. And I think one of the questions that many people have is, are the shifts that Apple is making in terms of their hardware and the related software, is that making it easier for a company like yours to provide a solid option for MDM, or do you still feel like you're trying to overcome a great deal, that there are lots of gaps that have to be filled in by a third party such as yours?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Apple's created an ecosystem where there is a lot of security tooling built in. There's they added the endpoint security framework to provide those entitlements for companies like ours to look at what's happening at the file system, provide EDR solutions for Apple. We rely on them to provide those APIs and that interface into what's happening, but they've left room for other parties like ourselves to innovate and add on top of that, which I think has been really exciting. Is it getting easier? Is it getting better? I really do think it is, right? Apple has made a clear commitment to a new approach to MDM that they're calling declarative device management, with the idea that you can specify the end goal, the end state that you want to achieve, and then the device will adjust or change the settings to match that desired end state. And that really aligns very closely with our philosophy. A lot of tools that I grew up with and used while I was an admin were really kind of finicky and required you to assemble the steps to program the tool to follow certain steps to get to the result you wanted. And if something went wrong with one of those steps, there wasn't any built-in remediation or mitigation to correct that. And so when we designed Kandji, our goal was really to provide admins with an interface where they could focus on what are they trying to get to? What's the end state that they want to achieve? Is it enabling disk encryption? Is it setting the passcode policy? What is the end goal? And then we use automation to get the device to that state. And we detect if something goes sideways, automatic retry logic. There's a lot of things that go into making that experience happen. But that's where I feel like where Apple's going and where we're going as a company work really nicely together. And so that we can help customers just get to the goal that they want.
Well, then time flies when you're having fun. Thank you so much for being here. But I do want to give you a chance before we sign out here to tell the folks at home where they can learn more about Kandji, maybe possibly get started on an MDM solution.
Sure, absolutely. So you can find lots of information at kandji.io, KANDJI.io. There's a request access button on there that you could get you started. You can go to kandji.io/start. And I'm excited to talk to people in person as well. So if you're interested in Apple at your company, we're going to be at DevWorld, XWorld in Melbourne, Australia. For folks that are in the Asia Pacific region, we'll be at RSA coming up shortly after that, the Mac Ad UK conference in Brighton, England. So if you're in this community, if you want to learn more about how to employ Apple, use Apple effectively within your organization, obviously you can reach out to us directly, but would love to meet you in person and have a conversation. Thanks for having me on today. It's been great.
Thanks again. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the best staying enterprise and IT podcast in the universe. So definitely tune your podcatcher to TWiT. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my co-host, starting their very own Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, what's going on for you in the coming weeks? Where can people find you?
I'm still tinkering, and I'm still got my Twitter as my primary social media as ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab. Would love to hear from you. And oh, by the way, today's show actually fits into the MDM thread that is viewer requested. So there you go. And we like hearing from you. We want to hear what topics you're interested in, what things you want to learn about, and throw it at us. Throw it at me on Twitter or throw it at me on email. I am Cheebert, spelled CHEEBERT at twit.tv. You're also welcome to throw email at TWiT at twit.tv, and that'll hit all the hosts. Would love to hear from you. Everybody stay safe.
Thank you, Cheebert. Well, we also have to thank our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, what's going on for you in the coming weeks? Where can people find you?
Well, as always, I'm going to be doing some writing at Dark Reading. I've got research coming up for our subscribers at omdia.com. I mentioned getting ready for the RSA conference. I'm also planning to be at Enterprise Connect at least one day during that show here in Orlando. As for me, between all of those things, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at KG4GWA. I'm on Mastodon, KG4GWA at mastodon.sdf.org. And you're welcome to follow me on LinkedIn or on Facebook. I'm just a tweeting, tooting, Facebook and Instagram and fool. And fortunately, I get paid for all of it. So, hey, it's a life.
Thank you, Curtis. Appreciate you being here. Great seeing you. Well, folks, we also have to thank you as well, because you are the person who drops in each and every week to watch and to listen to our show to get your enterprise and IT goodness. We want to make it easy for you to watch and listen to catch up on your enterprise and IT news. So go to our show page right now, twit.tv/TWiT. There you'll find all the amazing back episodes, the show notes, the co-host information, of course, the guest information, of course, the links of the stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, there, next to those videos there, you'll get those helpful subscribe and download links. Support the show by getting your audio version, video version of your choice, and listen on any one of your devices or any one of your podcast applications, because we're on all of them. So definitely subscribe and support the show. Plus, you may have also heard we also have Club TWiT. That's right. It's a members only ad-free podcast service with a bonus TWiT Plus feed that you can't get anywhere else. It's only $7 a month. And there are a lot of great things about Club TWiT, but one of them is exclusive access to a members only Discord server. You can chat with hosts like us, producers, separate discussion channels. They even have special events, lots of fun stuff on there. Join Club TWiT, be part of that movement. Go to twit.tv/Club TWiT. Club TWiT also offers corporate group plans as well. That's right. For your organization, give your team access to our ad-free tech podcast. They plans start with 5 members, discounted rate of $6 each per month, and you can add as many seats as you like. And this is a really great way for your IT department, your developers, your sales teams, your tech teams to stay up to date with access to all of our podcasts. And just like that regular membership, they can join the TWiT Discord server and get the TWiT Plus bonus feed as well. So definitely join Club TWiT, twit.tv/Club TWiT. Now, after you subscribe, impress your family members, your coworkers, your friends with the gift of TWiT. I guarantee they will find all of the tech topics we find on this show fun and interesting, just like we do. And I think you should definitely have them subscribe as well. And if you have them subscribe and you're maybe subscribed and you're available on Fridays, that's right, Fridays, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, we do the show live. You can go live.twit.tv. There we have all the streams. You can watch the show live. You can come see how the pizza's made, all the behind the scenes, all the banter that we do here at TWiT, and be part of that, as well as maybe if you want, you can also be part of the chat room as well. We have an IRC channel, a bunch of infamous characters in there. Should definitely be part of that stream and be part of that conversation. Go to irc.twit.tv, be part of the conversation there. There they are. All these great conversations there. I really love the chat room. I also want you to reach out to me. Twitter.com, Louis Maresca on LinkedIn. You can hit me up either place pretty easily. Feel free to do that. You can always send me an email, loumm@outlook.com as well. Or even send me an email at twit, lou@twit.tv. But again, just like Cheebert, hit all the hosts by hitting TWiT at twit.tv. There, if you want to show ideas or want to have good discussions about an episode, definitely hit us up there. If you want to know what I do at Microsoft during the normal work week, definitely hit me up or hit up developers.microsoft.com/office. There we post all the latest and greatest ways for you to customize your Office experience, whether you want to write some code in JavaScript or TypeScript to create your own add-in in Outlook or Excel or Word, or if you want to just try out maybe even our new macro recording capabilities called Office Scripts that you can run cross-platform. Definitely check that out at developers.microsoft.com/office. Now, I want to make sure I thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support This Week in Enterprise Tech each and every week, and we really couldn't do the show without them. So thank you for all their support. I want to thank all the engineers and staff at TWiT. And of course, I want to thank Mr. Brian Chee just one more time. He's not only our co-host, but he's also our tireless producer. That's right. He does all the show bookings and all the plannings for the show. And we really couldn't do the show without him. So thank you, Cheebert, for all your support. Of course, before we sign out, I want to thank our editor for today, because they make us look good after the fact. They remove all the mistakes and the nasty things in the show. So thank you for the editor support there. Of course, thank you to our technical director as well today, Mr. Ant Pruitt. He not only is our technical director, but he's also he does a great show called Hands-On Photography that shows how to do some things in photography each and every week. And I learned something every week from him. And what's going on in Hands-On Photography this week?
Well, thank you, Mr. Lou. This week on Hands-On Photography, I was able to sit down with Mr. Kenny Moore. And Kenny Moore is a fun person to talk to. He is just a, quote, regular guy. Actually, he's a truck driver that has taken the dive into the world of video editing and has really started to grow his YouTube channel. Just it's amazing to see how fast his growth has been going. And it's funny, he just sort of talks about being a truck driver and a regular dude that just likes good old DaVinci Resolves. Good stuff. twit.tv/HOP.
Fantastic. Great episode. Thank you, Ant. Well, folks, until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.
Hey, we should talk Linux. It's the operating system that runs the internet, but your game consoles, cell phones, and maybe even the machine on your desk. But you already knew all that. What you may not know is that TWiT now has a show dedicated to it, the Untitled Linux Show. Whether you're a Linux pro, a burgeoning sysadmin, or just curious what the big deal is, you should join us on the Club TWiT Discord every Saturday afternoon for news, analysis, and tips to sharpen your Linux skills. And then make sure you subscribe to the Club TWiT exclusive Untitled Linux Show. Wait, you're not a Club TWiT member yet? Well, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and sign up. Hope to see you there.